Have you ever found yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering why sleep seems to elude you just when you need it most? Those middle-of-the-night awakenings can feel isolating, as if you're the only person in the world battling with restlessness while everyone else enjoys peaceful slumber. Yet what if I told you that waking between 2 to 4 a.m. is actually a normal part of aging? Something your body is designed to do rather than a problem to be fixed. What if these quiet hours could become not just tolerable, but perhaps the most peaceful, reflective moments of your day? For many adults over 55, sleep becomes increasingly fragmented, with nighttime awakenings that can trigger frustration, anxiety, and even fear about health implications. The harder you try to force yourself back to sleep, the more elusive it becomes, creating a cycle of stress that affects your daytime energy, mood, and overall quality of life. This struggle often leads to dependence on sleep medications that may provide temporary relief, but rarely address the underlying patterns of your body's natural rhythms. Yet there exists an alternative approach, one that works with your changing physiology rather than fighting against it, transforming those midnight hours from a source of distress into an opportunity for wellness. Today, I'm going to share 7 transformative strategies that have helped hundreds of mature adults reclaim their sleep quality without medication or complicated techniques. These practical approaches will help you not only return to sleep more quickly, but also use those awakened moments to enhance your overall well-being. You'll learn simple breathing patterns that can calm your nervous system within minutes. Journaling, techniques that quiet racing thoughts, and sensory anchors that signal to your body it's time to return to sleep. We'll explore middle-of-night nutrition that supports rather than disrupts your sleep cycle. Visualization practices that gently guide you back to restfulness, and ways to create a peaceful sanctuary for those inevitable wakeful periods. What makes these approaches different is that they're specifically designed for the mature adults. Sleep architecture, taking into account the physiological changes that naturally occur as we age. Unlike generic sleep advice that often makes the problem worse by creating performance anxiety around sleep, these strategies embrace your body's natural patterns and work with them rather than against them. The goal isn't to force uninterrupted sleep, a pattern that actually becomes less natural as we age, but rather to create more ease around the sleep you do get, reducing the stress and worry that often accompany nighttime wakefulness. By shifting your relationship with sleep in this way, you not only improve your nights, but transform your days as well, bringing more energy, clarity, and peace to every aspect of your life. Before we dive into these transformative strategies, I want to acknowledge that what works best is often seeing these principles in action through real experiences. When we witness how others have overcome the exact challenges we face, suddenly, abstract advice becomes tangible possibility. That's why I've gathered insights from 4 remarkable individuals who've transformed their relationship with sleep using these exact techniques, and whose stories might remind you of your own. Their journeys from frustration to peace offer not just inspiration, but practical wisdom about how these approaches work in everyday life, with all its complexities and challenges. 2. Illustrate this, let me share a story that shows exactly what I mean. In a sunlit community center on a quiet Tuesday morning, Dr. Kristen Campbell arranges chairs in a circle while glancing occasionally at her notes. At 68, her posture still carries the confidence of her 30 years as a neurologist specializing in sleep disorders. Though her demeanor has softened since retirement, the walls display soothing landscapes and simple infographics about sleep cycles. As the room begins to fill with participants ranging from their mid-50s to early 80s, Dr. Campbell smiles warmly at each arrival. "Welcome, everyone," she says, her voice gentle yet commanding enough to quiet the room. "I see some new faces today alongside our regulars. I'm Dr. Kristen Campbell, and before I became the leader of this community sleep wellness program, I spent over 3 decades studying and treating sleep disorders, particularly in mature adults. She gestures to the empty chairs. Please make yourselves comfortable. Today we're going to explore something many of you have mentioned, those frustrating middle-of-night awakenings that leave you staring at the ceiling. Several participants nod vigorously, while others exchange knowing glances. A woman in the front row raises her hand slightly. Every night, like clockwork, she says, 3 a.m. and suddenly I'm wide awake, mind racing. Exactly, Alexis, Dr. Campbell acknowledges. And you're certainly not alone in that experience. She turns to address the entire group. What might surprise many of you is that waking between 2-4 a.m. is actually quite normal for adults over 55. It's not a disorder or something broken that needs fixing. It's a natural shift in sleep architecture that happens as we mature. A skeptical murmur passes through the room. A man with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard shakes his head. If it's so natural, why does it feel so awful? He asks, his voice carrying a hint of frustration. I wake up and can't get back to sleep for hours sometimes. That's an excellent question, Russell, Dr. Campbell responds. And it gets right to the heart of what we'll be discussing today. It's not the waking itself that creates problems. It's our relationship with that waking, and what we do during those alert periods that determines whether they become problematic or potentially beneficial. In the next few minutes, we'll explore these 7 transformative strategies through the journeys of Alexis, Russell, and others. If you've experienced these middle-of-night awakenings, please hit that like button and subscribe for more wisdom on aging gracefully. The community center grows quiet as Dr. Campbell stands and walks to a small table where she's arranged several items, a journal, a small bottle of what appears to be essential oil, and a few photographs. Today, she continues, I'll be sharing 7 transformative strategies that have helped hundreds of participants in our program reclaim their sleep quality. More importantly, these approaches can help you use those early morning awakenings to enhance your overall well-being rather than seeing them as problems to be eliminated. She gestures toward 4 participants sitting in a semicircle near her. These 4 individuals have generously agreed to share their experiences with you today. Each of them came to this program with different sleep challenges, and each has found their own path to better rest using the strategies we'll discuss. A woman with short silver hair and alert eyes nods as Dr. Campbell introduces her. This is Alexis Reed, 68, a former accountant who struggled with chronic insomnia that intensified after her retirement 3 years ago. Alexis smiles slightly, folding her hands in her lap. Beside her is Russell Calloway, 73, Dr. Campbell continues, indicating a tall man with thoughtful eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. Russell found his sleep patterns dramatically changing after losing his wife, with middle-of-night awakenings filled with memories and worries. Next to Russell is Bridget Foster, who took early retirement at 62 from her teaching career and found herself battling stress-related sleep disturbances. The woman with curly grey hair and reading glasses perched on top of her head waves briefly at the group. And finally, Keith Bennett, 81, who served in the military for over 3 decades and was initially quite skeptical about some of our softer approaches to sleep improvement. A distinguished-looking man with perfect posture nods curtly but warmly. Let's begin with our first strategy, Dr. Campbell says, moving to the center of the circle. The 4-7-8 breathing technique. She looks toward Alexis, who straightens in her chair. Alexis, would you mind sharing your experience with this approach? Alexis leans forward, making eye contact with several participants around the circle. Before I learned this technique, I would wake up around 2:30 almost every night. My mind would immediately start racing with thoughts about everything from unpaid bills to conversations from 30 years ago. Several heads nod in recognition. The harder I tried to fall back asleep, the more awake I felt. I'd end up exhausted the next day, which affected everything from my mood to my health. Dr. Campbell interjects gently. This is precisely the cycle that makes middle-night awakenings problematic. It's not the waking itself, but the stress response it triggers. She demonstrates by sitting up straight in her chair. The 4 to 7 to 8 breathing technique works by activating your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural relaxation response. She demonstrates by placing the tip of her tongue against the roof of her mouth, just behind her front teeth. You'll keep your tongue in this position throughout the exercise, she explains. First, exhale completely through your mouth, making a gentle whooshing sound. She demonstrates this sound, which causes a few participants to smile. Now close your mouth and inhale quietly through your nose for a mental count of 4. She inhales slowly, visibly counting with her fingers. Hold your breath for a count of 7. Her chest remains still as she holds. Then exhale completely, through your mouth for a count of 8, making that same whooshing sound. She releases her breath slowly, the sound audible but gentle. The key is the ratio between these numbers, not the specific time spent on each phase, Dr. Campbell explains. If holding your breath for a count of 7 is too difficult at first, reduce the counts, but maintain the ratio. Perhaps try 2 to 3, 4 instead. Alexis nods enthusiastically. I was skeptical at first. How could something so simple make a difference? But research from Stanford Sleep Institute shows that controlled breathing patterns like this can lower cortisol levels, your stress hormone, by up to 30%. I found that if I do 3 or 4 cycles of this breathing when I first wake up, I can usually fall back asleep within 15 minutes now, rather than staying awake for hours. Dr. Campbell smiles. The beauty of this technique is its simplicity. It requires no special equipment, can be done anywhere, and the effects are often immediate. When practiced regularly, it creates a powerful conditioning response. Your body begins to associate this breathing pattern with relaxation and sleep readiness. She turns to address the group again. I recommend practicing this breathing pattern several times during the day when you're not trying to sleep. This builds the neural pathway more strongly, so when you use it during nighttime awakenings, your body responds more readily. Russell raises his hand. I've combined this breathing with the second strategy you taught us, the brain dump journal. May I share how that works for me? Perfect transition, Russell, Dr. Campbell says, picking up a small notebook from her table. Our second strategy is keeping what we call a brain dump journal beside your bed. Russell, please tell us how you've used this approach. Russell shifts in his seat, his expression thoughtful. After losing my wife, my mind would race with memories and worries in the middle of the night. Sometimes they were precious memories I didn't want to lose. Sometimes anxieties about the future, sometimes just random thoughts that wouldn't quiet down. He gestures toward the notebook Dr. Campbell is holding. The journal helps me externalize these thoughts instead of letting them circulate endlessly. Dr. Campbell hands the notebook to a participant in the front row to examine. The brain dump journal is exactly what it sounds like. A place to quickly list any racing thoughts that might be keeping your mind active. The key is to use it without judgment or analysis. You're not problem-solving at 3 a.m. You're simply transferring thoughts from your mind to the page so your brain can let them go temporarily. Russell nods. I keep the journal and a pen with a small light attached right beside my bed. When I wake up with thoughts churning, I write down everything that's on my mind, no matter how trivial or profound. Sometimes it's just a few words or phrases, sometimes full sentences. The act of writing seems to tell my brain, it's okay, we won't forget this, we can deal with it tomorrow. There's solid neurological science behind this, Dr. Campbell explains. Writing physically transfers racing thoughts from the emotional brain, your amygdala, to the rational brain, your prefrontal cortex. This makes them less emotionally charged and easier to set aside temporarily. Studies at UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center have shown that this simple act of writing can decrease amygdala activity by up to 40% within just 5 minutes. Woman near the back raises her hand, but doesn't turning on a light to write wake you up more? Excellent question, Dr. Campbell responds. We recommend using the minimum light necessary, a small book light or pen light, rather than turning on your bedside lamp. And yes, there is some evidence that blue light can be stimulating, but the benefit of clearing your mind typically outweighs this concern, especially if you follow the writing with the breathing technique we just discussed. Russell adds, I found that I rarely need to write for more than 3 or 4 minutes. Once the thoughts are on paper, it's like my mind relaxes, knowing it doesn't have to keep cycling through them to remember. Dr. Campbell takes back the notebook. I also encourage reviewing these notes the next day, perhaps with your morning coffee. This completes the cycle, showing your subconscious that you're addressing its concerns, which often results in fewer middle-night thought spirals. Over time, she places the journal back on her table and picks up a small amber bottle. This brings us to our third strategy, aromatherapy anchors. She turns toward Bridget Foster, who straightens in her chair. Bridget, would you share how you've used scent as a sleep aid? Bridget smiles and leans forward. When I first came to this program, I was taking sleep medication every night. After years of managing classroom stress, I couldn't seem to turn off my brain, especially when I'd wake up around 3 a.m. She gestures toward the bottle Dr. Campbell is holding. The idea of aromatherapy seemed too simple to work, honestly. But I was willing to try anything that might help me reduce the medication. Dr. Campbell uncaps the bottle and continues Bridget's thought. What makes aromatherapy particularly effective for sleep issues is the direct connection between our olfactory system, our sense of smell, and the brain's limbic system, which governs both emotions and memory. This connection is why certain scents can instantly transport you to another time and place, evoking powerful emotional responses. Bridget nods. Dr. Campbell helped me create what she calls a scent anchor, using the same specific aroma consistently during relaxation practices and sleep transitions. I chose lavender because research shows it can increase slow-wave sleep, but others in our group use different scents. The key is consistency, Dr. Campbell emphasizes, passing the bottle to nearby participants to smell. You want to create a powerful association between this specific scent and the state of relaxation and sleep readiness. Bridget, can you describe your routine? I keep this small roller bottle of lavender oil on my nightstand. When I first wake up at night, I apply a tiny amount to my wrists. Bridget demonstrates the motion. Then I cup my hands over my nose and take 3 deep breaths of the scent while silently saying to myself, this is my signal for returning to sleep. It's remarkable how quickly my body has learned this association. Dr. Campbell takes back the bottle and addresses the group. Beyond lavender, other recommended scents include cedarwood, chamomile, and vanilla. The scent you choose matters less than using it consistently to create that powerful neural association. And Bridget, would you share how this approach affected your need for sleep medication? Bridget's expression brightens. Within 3 weeks of consistently using this technique alongside the others we're discussing today, I was able to reduce my sleep medication by half. After 2 months, I only needed it occasionally rather than nightly. That alone made a tremendous difference in how I felt during the day, more clear-headed and energetic. This highlights an important point, Dr. Campbell adds. These strategies can work alongside conventional treatments. Always consult your healthcare provider before changing any medication regimen. But many find these approaches allow them to reduce their reliance on pharmaceutical sleep aids over time. She moves to the center of the circle again. Our fourth strategy focuses on progressive physical relaxation through a body scan technique. Keith, I believe this was the approach that finally won you over, wasn't it? Keith Bennett sits up even straighter, his military bearing evident. That's right, he says with a slight smile. When Dr. Campbell first suggested breathing exercises and scented oils, I was skeptical, to put it politely. A few chuckles ripple through the group. But when she mentioned this technique had been adapted from military protocols designed to help soldiers sleep in challenging conditions, I became more interested. Dr. Campbell explains to the group, the body scan relaxation technique is exactly what it sounds like, systematically relaxing each part of your body from toes to head. What makes it particularly effective for middle-night awakenings is that it redirects attention from racing thoughts to physical sensations, which naturally slows brain activity. Keith nods. The technique involves lying comfortably and bringing your attention first to your toes. You tense them slightly, then release completely, noticing the difference between tension and relaxation. Then you move upward, feet, ankles, calves, knees, all the way to your face and head, spending about 10-15 seconds on each body part. What Keith is describing is a form of progressive muscle relaxation, Dr. Campbell interjects. Research at Harvard Medical School has shown this technique reduces sleep latency, the time it takes to fall asleep, by an average of 65% when practiced regularly. It's particularly effective for those who hold tension physically during stress or who have pain conditions that interfere with sleep. That was certainly true for me, Keith acknowledges. After decades of military service, I carried a lot of physical tension, especially in my shoulders and jaw. Learning to systematically release that tension had benefits beyond sleep. Less pain during the day, more energy, even better mood. Dr. Campbell adds, one key to making this technique most effective is practicing it during the day when you're not trying to sleep. This builds the neural pathway more strongly, making the relaxation response more automatic when you use it during nighttime awakenings. A participant raises her hand. Is it normal to fall asleep before you finish the whole body scan? Keith laughs. Almost every time. I rarely make it past my shoulders before I'm drifting off again. That's absolutely fine, Dr. Campbell assures the group. The goal isn't to complete the exercise, but to redirect your attention and trigger the relaxation response. If sleep comes before you finish, the technique has done its job perfectly. She moves to the side of the room where a small table displays several food items, a few almonds, half a banana, and what appears to be a small container of cottage cheese with 2 whole-grain crackers. This brings us to our fifth strategy, which addresses the physiological aspects of middle-night wakefulness, the 2-2-2 rule for middle-of-night nutrition. She gestures toward the food items. Many people find hunger contributes to their inability to return to sleep, but eating the wrong things can make the problem worse. Alexis raises her hand. This was a game changer for me. I used to avoid eating anything if I woke up hungry, thinking any food would interfere with sleep. Sometimes I'd lie there for hours with my stomach growling. Dr. Campbell nods. Many sleep experts advise against eating at night, but this advice fails to consider the complex relationship between blood sugar stability and sleep quality, particularly in mature adults. If hunger is causing wakefulness, ignoring it often prolongs the problem. She picks up a small plate. The 2-2-2 rule offers a simple guideline. If hunger is keeping you awake, consume something containing protein, fat, and complex carbohydrates. In a 2-2.2 ratio, essentially 2 small bites of each. This balance helps stabilize blood sugar without overloading your digestive system. She indicates the food items on the table. Good options include a few nuts with half a banana or a small spoonful of cottage cheese with a couple of whole grain crackers. The key is keeping portions very small, just enough to address hunger without fully activating your digestive system. Russell interjects, I was surprised by how well this works. For years, I'd either lie there hungry or give in and eat something substantial, usually ending up with indigestion. This approach is just enough to quiet hunger signals without causing discomfort. There's solid science behind this, Dr. Campbell explains. Protein and fat slow digestion and provide sustained energy, while the small amount of complex carbohydrates helps produce serotonin, a neurotransmitter that promotes sleep. Research from the Sleep Disorder Center at Cleveland Clinic shows that small, balanced snacks can actually improve sleep quality by preventing the blood sugar drops that often trigger wakefulness. She emphasizes an important point. This strategy is specifically for those who identify hunger as a factor in their middle night awakenings. If hunger isn't an issue for you, there's no need to incorporate nighttime eating. Dr. Campbell returns to her chair and glances at the participants. You've now learned 5 powerful strategies for transforming your relationship with middle night awakenings. The 4 to 7-8 breathing technique to activate your relaxation response. The brain dump journal to externalize racing thoughts. Aromatherapy. Anchors to create powerful sleep associations. The body scan technique to release physical tension. And the 2-2-2 rule for addressing hunger without disrupting sleep. She looks around the circle, her expression warm yet serious. What binds these approaches together is a fundamental shift in perspective, from seeing nighttime awakenings as problems to be eliminated to viewing them as natural transitions that can be navigated with greater ease. Each strategy works with your body's natural physiology rather than fighting against it. Alexis raises her hand again. Could you talk about the sleep space strategy? That's been so important for me. That's an excellent transition to our 6th strategy, Dr. Campbell responds, creating what we call a return to sleep space, a dedicated area for those inevitable middle night awakenings. Alexis sits forward eagerly. Before joining this program, I would lie in bed getting increasingly frustrated when I couldn't fall back asleep. Dr. Campbell suggested creating a comfortable spot in my bedroom specifically for those awake periods. And it completely changed my experience. Dr. Campbell explains to the group, the concept is simple but powerful. For many of us, lying in bed awake creates mounting pressure and anxiety about not sleeping, which activates stress hormones that make sleep even more elusive. Having a comfortable alternative space removes that pressure, often making sleep return more naturally. Alexis describes her setup. I have a comfortable chair in the corner of my bedroom with soft lighting, a weighted blanket, and a few calming elements like my aromatherapy diffuser and a book of poetry. When I wake up and sense I won't fall back asleep within about 10 minutes, I simply move to this space instead of lying in bed frustrated. What makes this approach effective, Dr. Campbell adds, is that it interrupts the negative conditioning that can develop when we spend too much time awake in bed. Your bed should be associated primarily with sleep and intimacy, not with frustration, anxiety, or wakefulness. Alexis continues, in my return to sleep space, I might read something calming, practice the breathing techniques we've discussed, or simply sit quietly with my thoughts. When sleepiness naturally returns, which it almost always does, I move back to bed. The remarkable thing is how much this reduces the anxiety around waking up at night. Research from the University of Pennsylvania Sleep Center shows that this approach, which they call stimulus control therapy, is one of the most effective components of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, Dr. Campbell notes. By creating psychological separation between your sleeping space and your waking activities, you strengthen the association between your bed and actual sleep. Russell adds his perspective. What I appreciate about this strategy is how it transforms those middle night periods from something to dread into something almost pleasant. Sometimes I look forward to that quiet time with a good book or my thoughts, which ironically seems to help me fall back asleep more easily. Exactly, Dr. Campbell smiles. When we remove the pressure and frustration around sleep, we create the conditions where it can occur more naturally. This approach acknowledges that some wakefulness during the night is normal, especially as we age, and gives us a way to make those periods restful even if we're not actually sleeping. She looks around at the participants, many of whom are nodding in recognition or taking notes. Before we continue with our final strategy, I'd love to know if any of these approaches resonate particularly with you. If you've experienced middle night awakenings, please subscribe to our channel and share which of these strategies you might try in the comments below. Dr. Campbell checks her notes briefly, then looks back at the group. Now, let's explore our seventh and final strategy: multisensory visualization. Russell has found this particularly effective. Russell, would you share your experience? Russell nods and sits forward slightly. As I mentioned earlier, after losing my wife, my mind would often race with memories and thoughts when I woke up at night. The journal helped externalize those thoughts, but I still needed something to redirect my attention in a more engaging way. His expression softens. Dr. Campbell taught me about multisensory visualization, mentally walking through peaceful scenarios while engaging multiple senses. This technique works differently from simply counting sheep or other monotonous mental exercises, Dr. Campbell explains. When you create a rich, detailed mental experience that engages multiple sensory pathways, you activate many of the same neural networks as during actual sensory experiences. This effectively distracts your analytical mind, which is often responsible for keeping you awake. Russell describes his approach. I visualize walking through my childhood summer cabin. I start by mentally hearing the screen door close behind me, then smelling the pine trees that surrounded the property. His voice takes on a dreamy quality. I feel the cool wooden floor. Beneath my feet, see the sunlight filtering through dusty windows, hear the distant sound of a boat on the lake. I walk through each room with as much detail as I can remember. Dr. Campbell adds, what makes Russell's visualization particularly effective is how it engages all five senses and follows a consistent path. This combination creates what neuroscientists call a rich cognitive environment that gently occupies the mind without stimulating problem-solving or analytical thinking. I rarely make it through the entire cabin before falling asleep again, Russell says with a slight smile. Something about revisiting this peaceful place from my childhood seems to quiet my mind in a way that more abstract exercises never could. The key to effective visualization is finding scenarios that are personally meaningful and calming for you, Dr. Campbell emphasizes. Some people revisit favorite vacation spots, others walk through their grandmother's garden or along a beloved hiking trail. The specifics matter less than creating a multi-sensory journey that you can return to consistently. Bridget raises her hand. I've combined this with the aromatherapy we discussed earlier. I visualize walking through lavender fields in Provence, which reinforces the association with my lavender essential oil. The combination seems more powerful than either approach alone. That's an excellent observation, Bridget. Dr. Campbell nods approvingly. Many of these strategies work synergistically when combined thoughtfully. The visualization becomes a mental anchor for your breathing practice or aromatherapy, creating multiple pathways to the same relaxation response. She pauses, looking around the circle. I want to emphasize that these 7 strategies are not meant to be implemented all at once. Start with the 1 or 2 that resonate most strongly with you. Practice them consistently for at least 2 weeks, then gradually incorporate others if needed. Consistency matters more than quantity. Keith, who has been listening intently, raises his hand. Could you talk about how these approaches differ from what younger adults might use for sleep issues? I've noticed that the advice my grandchildren follow doesn't seem to work as well for me." "That's an astute observation, Keith," Dr. Campbell responds. "Sleep architecture, the pattern and quality of our sleep cycles, changes significantly as we mature. These changes are entirely normal, but require different approaches than those typically recommended for younger adults." She explains further, "As we age, several biological shifts occur. Our circadian rhythm often advances, making us naturally sleepier earlier in the evening and more prone to early morning wakefulness. We produce less melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep readiness, and we experience less deep, slow-wave sleep and more light sleep, making us more easily awakened. Given these natural changes," she continues, "the goal shifts from trying to force an uninterrupted 8 hours, which may actually be less natural for mature adults, to working with these new patterns to ensure the sleep we do get is restful and restorative. That's why the strategies we've discussed focus on easing transitions rather than eliminating awakenings altogether." Alexis nods in agreement. "That perspective shift was huge for me. Once I stopped seeing my middle night awakenings as a problem to be solved and started viewing them as natural transitions to be navigated, much of my anxiety disappeared, and ironically, I started sleeping better overall." That's exactly the paradox, Dr. Campbell smiles. "The less we stress about sleep, often the better we sleep. And even when awakenings still occur, which they will, they become brief, peaceful transitions rather than extended periods of frustration." She stands and moves to the center of the circle again. "Before we conclude, I'd like to address the wider context of these strategies. Sleep doesn't exist in isolation. It's interconnected with every aspect of your physical and emotional well-being. While these 7 approaches address the immediate experience of nighttime awakenings, they work best when supported by foundational sleep practices." Dr. Campbell begins counting on her fingers. "Regular physical activity, preferably earlier in the day, helps regulate your circadian rhythm and increases your body's drive for sleep. Consistent sleep and wake times, even on weekends, strengthen your body's natural sleep-wake cycle. Light exposure, particularly morning sunlight, helps synchronize your internal clock with the external world and creating a sleep-supportive environment, a comfortable mattress, cool room temperature, minimal noise and light, sets the stage for better sleep quality." A woman who hasn't spoken before raises her hand tentatively. "What about electronics? My children are always telling me to avoid screens before bedtime." "They're giving sound advice," Dr. Campbell confirms. "The blue light emitted by phones, tablets, computers, and televisions can suppress melatonin production, making it harder to fall asleep initially. I generally recommend avoiding screens for at least an hour before bedtime or using blue light blocking glasses if that's not practical." She continues, "However, I take a more nuanced view regarding middle night awakenings. If you wake up and cannot fall back asleep within 10-15 minutes, moving to your return to sleep space and reading something calming on an e-reader with the brightness turned low may be more beneficial than lying in bed frustrated. The key is minimizing exposure to bright light, particularly blue light, which can further disrupt your circadian rhythm." Russell adds, "I use an e-reader with a warm light setting when I move to my chair at night. It seems to be a good compromise, enough light to read comfortably, but not so much that it fully wakes me up." Dr. Campbell nods. "Technology, when used mindfully, can be a tool rather than an obstacle. There are also excellent apps that guide you through breathing exercises, progressive relaxation, or visualization practices. Just be sure to use night mode or warm light settings and keep the volume and brightness low." She pauses, then addresses another dimension. "I'd also like to touch on the emotional and psychological aspects of sleep, which become increasingly important as we navigate life transitions. Major changes, retirement, loss of a spouse, health diagnoses, relocating to a new home, can profoundly impact sleep patterns, often manifesting as middle-night awakenings filled with processing or worry. Keith nods in recognition. After retirement, my sleep completely changed. Without the structured routine I'd had for decades, I found myself waking up at odd hours, feeling somewhat untethered. That's a common experience, Dr. Campbell affirms. Our sleep patterns are intimately connected to our sense of purpose and identity. When these shift, as they often do in our mature years, sleep often reflects that transition. This is another reason why I encourage viewing these awakenings not as problems, but as opportunities. Perhaps your subconscious mind is using this time to process important life changes. Bridget speaks up. I've started keeping a gratitude journal as part of my return to sleep routine. If I wake up worried about changes in my life, writing down 3 things I'm grateful for helps shift my perspective from what I've lost to what I still have. That's a beautiful practice, Dr. Campbell smiles warmly. Gratitude has been shown to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, that relaxation response we talked about earlier, and decrease activity in brain regions associated with anxiety and rumination. It's a powerful addition to any sleep routine. She adds, this touches on a broader principle I'd like to emphasize. The middle of the night can become a sacred time for self-reflection, creativity, and connection with your inner wisdom. Throughout history and across cultures, many spiritual traditions have valued these quiet hours for meditation, prayer, and contemplation. Rather than seeing nighttime wakefulness as a modern problem to be solved, we might reconnect with this ancient appreciation. For night's quiet hours, Alexis nods enthusiastically. That perspective has transformed my experience completely. I used to dread waking up at night, but now I sometimes look forward to that peaceful time. There's a quality to the silence at 3 a.m. that feels, I don't know, almost sacred. Exactly, Dr. Campbell agrees. When we step out of the struggle with sleep and into a more accepting relationship with wakefulness, something profound can happen. Those middle night hours can become a cherished time for connecting with yourself without the distractions and demands of daily life. She returns to her chair, but remains standing beside it. Before we move to our group discussion, I'd like to touch on one more important topic: when to seek professional help for sleep issues. While middle night awakenings are normal and can be managed with the strategies we've discussed, certain symptoms warrant medical attention. Dr. Campbell counts these symptoms on her fingers. Persistent difficulty falling asleep initially, particularly if it takes longer than 30-45 minutes most nights. Waking up gasping for air or with a choking sensation, which could indicate sleep apnea. Excessive daytime sleepiness that interferes with daily activities. And any sudden change in sleep patterns, especially if accompanied by other symptoms. These all merit a conversation with your healthcare provider, she adds. Sleep medications have their place in treating certain sleep disorders, particularly for short-term relief during acute periods of stress or transition. However, many aren't designed for long-term use, and some carry particular risks for older adults. Always discuss both the benefits and potential side effects of sleep medications with your healthcare provider, and consider them as part of a broader approach that includes behavioral strategies like the ones we've discussed today. Russell raises his hand. I found that combining these natural approaches with my doctor's recommendations worked better than either approach alone. The medication helped initially while I was developing these new skills and habits. Over time, I needed the medication less and less. That's often the case, Dr. Campbell nods. These approaches aren't alternatives to medical care, but complementary strategies that can enhance its effectiveness. The goal is finding what works best for your unique situation, which often involves some thoughtful experimentation and collaboration with healthcare providers. She scans the room, noting engaged expressions and occasional note-taking. Now, I'd like to shift our focus to how these 7 strategies have transformed the relationship with sleep for our 4 participant examples. Each of them came to this program with different challenges, yet each has found their own path to more restful nights. Dr. Campbell turns to Alexis. Alexis, would you share how your experience with sleep has changed since implementing these approaches? Alexis straightens in her chair, her expression brighter than when she was first introduced. Before joining this program, I dreaded bedtime because I knew I'd likely wake up around 2:30 and spend hours tossing and turning. The exhaustion affected everything, my mood, my health, my relationships. I felt like I was constantly operating at half capacity. She continues, now I still wake up most nights, that hasn't changed, but my response to waking is completely different. I use the 4 to 7, 8 breathing right away, and if I'm not back to sleep within about 10 minutes, I simply move to my comfortable chair. Sometimes I read poetry, sometimes I practice more intentional breathing or visualization, and almost always within 20-30 minutes, I naturally become sleepy again. The difference, she emphasizes, is that those awake periods are no longer filled with frustration and anxiety. They've become peaceful interludes rather than battles. And because I'm getting better quality sleep overall, my daytime energy has improved dramatically. I'm engaged with life again in a way I hadn't been for years. Dr. Campbell nods approvingly, then turns to Russell. Russell, your experience was somewhat different. Could you share your journey? Russell's deep voice is thoughtful. After losing my wife, sleep became a complicated experience. Sometimes I wanted to sleep all the time to escape grief. Other times, I'd lie awake for hours with memories and regrets cycling through my mind. He pauses, gathering his thoughts. The journal was transformative for me, having a place to externalize those thoughts instead of trying to suppress them. And the visualization practice gave me a way to visit pleasant memories without getting caught in grief spirals. He continues, what surprised me most was discovering that those middle-night quiet hours could become a time for processing my loss in a gentler, more intentional way. Sometimes I actually use that time to write letters to my wife in my journal, things I wish I could tell her about my day or memories that have surfaced. It's become a meaningful ritual rather than a dreaded ordeal. Dr. Campbell responds warmly. That's a beautiful example of transforming what could be a difficult experience into something healing. Thank you for sharing that, Russell. She turns to Bridget. Bridget, your journey involved reducing medication dependence. Would you tell us more about that process? Bridget adjusts her reading glasses. As I mentioned earlier, I was taking sleep medication every night when I started this program. While it helped me fall asleep initially, I still experienced middle-night awakenings, and the medication often left me feeling groggy the next day. She describes her approach. I worked with my doctor to gradually reduce my medication while implementing these strategies, particularly the aromatherapy anchors, the 2-2-2 nutrition approach for hunger, and creating a return-to-sleep space. The combination allowed me to gradually decrease my reliance on medication without experiencing the rebound insomnia I'd feared. Bridget's expression brightens. Now I use medication only occasionally, perhaps once every few weeks during particularly stressful periods. The difference in how I feel during the day is remarkable. More clear-headed, more energetic, more present. And I actually feel more confident about my sleep, knowing I have multiple tools for navigating those nighttime awakenings, rather than depending solely on medication. Dr. Campbell nods. Your experience highlights an important point. These approaches can work alongside conventional treatments, often enhancing their effectiveness, while potentially reducing dependence over time. Always partner with your healthcare provider when adjusting any medication regimen, but know that these natural strategies can be powerful allies in that process. She turns finally to Keith. Keith, you came to this program with perhaps the most skepticism. How has your perspective evolved? Keith's military bearing remains evident, but his expression has softened considerably. As I mentioned, I was highly skeptical of what I considered soft approaches to sleep. After 30 years of military service, I was accustomed to pushing through discomfort and viewed sleep as something to be conquered rather than cultivated. He continues, what changed my mind was learning that the body scan technique had been adapted from military protocols. Once I gave it a serious try, I was astonished by how effective it was at releasing physical tension I didn't even realize I was carrying. From there, I became more open to other approaches, particularly the brain dump journal and the return to sleep space. And Keith's voice takes on a tone of wonder. What's been most surprising is discovering how much more effective surrender is than struggle when it comes to sleep. All those years of trying to force myself to sleep through sheer willpower actually made the problem worse. Learning to work with my body's natural patterns instead of fighting against them has been genuinely transformative. Dr. Campbell smiles appreciatively. Thank you for that powerful insight, Keith. It perfectly captures the central philosophy behind everything we've discussed today, working with our natural physiology rather than against it, shifting from struggle to acceptance. She stands again and addresses the entire group. As we've heard from Alexis, Russell, Bridget, and Keith, the transformation isn't just about sleeping better, though that certainly happens. It's about changing your relationship with sleep and with wakefulness, finding peace in both states rather than fearing one and clinging to the other. Dr. Campbell continues, what unites all 7 strategies we've explored today is this fundamental shift in perspective, seeing nighttime awakenings not as problems to be eliminated, but as natural transitions to be navigated with skill and ease. When we make this shift, something remarkable happens. Not only does our sleep often improve, but those middle night hours can become valued opportunities for quiet reflection, creativity, and reconnection with ourselves. She scans the room, making brief eye contact with several participants. As you begin implementing these approaches in your own life, remember that consistency matters more than perfection. Start with just 1 or 2 strategies that resonate most strongly with you. Practice them nightly for at least 2 weeks. Then gradually incorporate others if needed. Be patient with yourself through this process. New habits take time to establish, particularly when they involve something as fundamental as sleep. Dr. Campbell concludes, my hope for each of you is not necessarily that you'll never wake up at night again. That may not be realistic or even desirable as we age. Rather, my hope is that those awakenings, when they occur, will become peaceful interludes rather than sources of frustration. Perhaps even moments you come to appreciate for their quiet gift of uninterrupted thought in our otherwise busy lives. The community center falls quiet as participants absorb her words. After a moment, a woman near the back raises her hand. How can we continue learning about these approaches after today's session? Dr. Campbell smiles warmly. We'll be exploring each of these strategies in greater depth in future sessions. And if you're finding this information helpful, please tap the like button below this video to help others discover these sleep wisdom practices too. As the session comes to a close, participants begin gathering their belongings and chatting quietly among themselves. Dr. Campbell watches with quiet satisfaction as Alexis approaches Russell, pointing to something in his journal. Bridget joins them, showing Keith the small bottle of essential oil she keeps in her purse. What began as individual journeys has clearly evolved into a supportive community, each person enriched by the other's experiences. Dr. Campbell gathers her materials and addresses the group one final time. Before we disperse today, I want to leave you with a thought that has guided my work for decades. Sleep is not merely the absence of wakefulness, but a vital dimension of well-being that affects every aspect of our lives. When we transform our relationship with sleep, we transform our experience of living, she continues. The 4 individuals who shared their journeys today came from different backgrounds with different challenges. Alexis struggled with chronic insomnia that intensified after retirement. Russell faced nighttime awakenings filled with grief after losing his wife. Bridget was dependent on sleep medication that left her feeling groggy and disconnected. Keith was skeptical that anything beyond sheer willpower could improve his sleep quality. Yet each found their way to greater peace, not by eliminating nighttime awakenings entirely, but by changing their relationship with those inevitable transitions. Their stories remind us that transformation rarely comes from forcing change, but rather from cultivating acceptance and working with our natural patterns rather than against them. The participants begin to move toward the door, some lingering to ask final questions or thank Dr. Campbell personally. Alexis approaches with a warm smile, squeezing the doctor's hand. "You've changed not just my nights, but my days as well," she says quietly. "I feel like I've reclaimed a part of my life I thought was lost forever." Russell nods in agreement. "Those middle night hours have become almost sacred to me now," he adds. "A time for remembering, for processing, for just being with myself in a way that's different from the busy daylight hours." Bridget and Keith join them, forming a small circle around Dr. Campbell. "I've been telling my friends about this program," Bridget says. "So many of them struggle with the same issues, but they've just accepted poor sleep as an inevitable part of aging." "Which it isn't," Keith interjects firmly. "Different sleep, yes. Changing patterns, certainly. But poor quality sleep is not something we have to surrender to." Dr. Campbell looks at each of them with genuine affection. "You've all done the real work here," she says. "I've simply offered some tools and a different perspective. The courage to change long-established patterns and beliefs. That came from each of you." As the community center empties and Dr. Campbell gathers the last of her materials, she reflects on the ripple effects these 7 strategies will have in the lives of today's participants. Better sleep means more energy for engaging with loved ones, pursuing passions, contributing to community. It means clearer thinking, more balanced emotions, greater resilience in facing life's challenges. In transforming their relationship with sleep, these individuals are transforming countless dimensions of their waking lives as well. And what about you? As you consider these 7 strategies for transforming your relationship with middle night awakenings, which resonates most strongly with your own experience, perhaps it's the 4 to 7 to 8 breathing technique that activates your body's natural relaxation response. Or maybe the brain dump journal speaks to your tendency toward racing thoughts. When you wake at night, the aromatherapy anchors, body scan relaxation, mindful middle night nutrition, return to sleep space, or multisensory visualization, each offers a unique pathway to greater ease around sleep transitions. How might your nights, and subsequently your days, transform if you approach those inevitable awakenings not as problems to be eliminated, but as natural transitions to be navigated with skill and grace? What if those quiet hours became opportunities for reconnection with yourself rather than sources of frustration? What if you could find peace in both sleeping and waking rather than fearing one and clinging to the other? The journey toward better sleep is ultimately a journey toward greater self-understanding, self-compassion, and alignment with your body's natural rhythms. It's about relinquishing struggle in favor of acceptance, resistance in favor of flow. These principles extend far beyond the bedroom, offering wisdom for navigating all of life's inevitable transitions with greater ease and dignity. As you move forward from here, I encourage you to begin with just one strategy that speaks to your particular situation. Practice it consistently for at least 2 weeks, being patient with yourself as you develop this new skill. Remember that transformation rarely happens overnight. It emerges gradually through small, consistent actions taken with intention and care. May your nights become more peaceful, your transitions more graceful, and your days more vibrant as you implement these approaches in your own life. If you found value in these insights, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on navigating life's transitions with dignity and purpose.